Hi friends, it's your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Chaosium, Call of Cthulhu 5th edition, and Delta Green, and we're continuing with Death in the Desert. So at this point, my character Dwayne Harrigan, a federal agent, specifically a border patrol agent, who joined a three jurisdiction task force: Arizona State Police, Arizona Apache Reservation Police, and the FBI. And it wasn't called INS then; it was just called the Border Patrol. Or actually, you know what? I think it might have been called IN. It was called INS then. It's called ICE today. Um, so basically, my character then has been searching for this killer on I-70, and he has found out that this killer, uh, a a demon, it actually puts like almost like fang marks, but it does it at different points in the body, not like a vampire, right? And so, which is really fascinating. And then this thing floods the body with adrenochrome. Okay, and so at this point, we found Emmanuel Santana, who was an old veteran Apache, who had cannibalized people. We found this dark sand painting, and at this point, I'm aware. I'm like, Emmanuel Santana is killed, and so, but my partner Scott Yeager has bumped his head, right? So at this point, I'm like, okay, I need to continue investigating. I go to Marina Two Stones, who is a librarian there in the Apache area, and I sit down with her and say, hey, I'm sorry to talk to you about this, but like I really need to talk to somebody. So I've made a major breakthrough in the case, and this killer is an extremely dangerous predator, and I believe that this extremely dangerous predator has a supernatural source. But and at this point, I need to stay on the trail immediately because the trail is hot. I've been very successful in tracking this thing down, but I have not been successful in getting allies, right? And so I need to pursue this thing, but I also realize I'm going into the lion's den, right? Like at this point, I'm pursuing a supernatural killer, but I don't have enough information about them, and I don't have any allies, right? And I just really don't feel like I'm equipped to take this on. But I also realize if I don't do something right now, this thing is going to move on. We're not going to find out what its source is. We're not going to find out any more about it, and this supernatural killer will have a chance to regroup, re-equip, right? And so I feel alone, and I don't know how to pursue, how to go forward. So um, this librarian, this Apache librarian, says, well, listen, you're not, So my character's 28 years old, right? And so I say, and she's like, you're not a young man. You're not, a young man who would go on a rite of passage. Usually that would be 10 years younger than this. But this is like a rite of passage. And rites of passage are taken alone, right? And I was like, that's perfect, right? So I'm like, I needed to know whether I needed to go forward with a very distinct possibility I would die, or to not go forward and try to build up allies and try to get people to believe in this supernatural source when no one seems to want to believe any of that. And so at this point, I decide to go forward, right? So at this point, I chase the body, Emmanuel Santana. I'm like, I think there's something inside of him. I think he's possessed, or there's some type of creature inside of him. So I find out where his body is, and his body is 2 hours away, okay, back toward California in this remote town, right? So I drive I-70 for about 2 miles by myself in my car, and I can't bring Scott Yeager, my FBI agent partner, because he has a concussion, right? Which if you watch the playthroughs here, you'll find that information. And so I go by myself, right? So I get to this building, I find it, I scout it out. The building has its lights on, and and it's a morgue, right? And but outside there is there's three cars, and one of them is a black SUV. And there was a question of like, we're actually getting better at, like dealing with 1995, because like they didn't really use the term SUV in 1995. Like, yeah, and there really wasn't a term for it at all. So it was the Bronco was an SUV then, and it was around in 1995, but it wasn't called a sports utility vehicle then. So there's this SUV there, and at that point, this is fascinating too. Like, it's really fascinating how dungeon masters deal with their players, right? Like, it would mean a lot to me if every car was named. Like, this is like, here's the 1995 car that this person that you see driving down the road. The dungeon master doesn't care about that though, right? But that means a lot. That's a lot to me, right? And so it's really fascinating, what a dungeon master cares about compared to what would plus the game for. And here's another thing. And so this is a small campaign, one player, one dungeon master, right? And but what's really interesting is once you get to 5 people, this idea that everybody should have a fun at a Dungeons and Dragons game is so ludicrous, because like, what will plus the game for one person won't plus the game for others, right? Like, I guarantee at any 5-player Call of Cthulhu game, the odds of all 5 players being really excited to know, oh, that's a 1995 El Camino, right? It would not help, right? It's really, I find that so fascinating. So so this black SUV is there, and it's running, and it's got its lights on, right? So I pull in, and I'm like, you know what, like, and this is really fascinating, because so I was like, I'm gonna get out of my car, I'm gonna pull my Colt revolver, my Colt Cobra revolver, and I'm just gonna run toward the SUV and shoot right into the window. I'm intending to kill the driver. And like, so, and the point is, I'm like, super sketch black SUV, I'm not playing, right? Like, this could be anybody, but I'm not playing anymore. I know I'm in the, we are at the end of the freaking movie, right? Like, and I know it, right? Like, and so I'm like, so I run over, I shoot into the car, and I actually smashed the window through, but I don't kill the driver. And then the driver starts to speed away, and I run over and leap onto the car, and I TJ Hooker it, and then there's an additional fight, and I'm shooting into the car, and they're trying to like swerve the car to throw me off, and finally they do swerve the car, and they do throw me off, right? I do live, and just to be clear, Delta Green, you got like 13 hit points, right? And they deal damage in 1d4, 1d6, and 1d8. And let me tell you something. I'm used, like, at this point, this character that's a good question. Oh boy, you know what? I need to stay on target here, because I'm not even sure. That's a great point. I'm not even sure what the level of my character is in this game, right? That's another thing that's really interesting, is I have not read any of Call of Cthulhu 5th edition, and I've not read any of Delta Green. And so we're playing with me having literally 0 system mastery, and it is 0 obstacle to the play. In fact, it might actually be making the play better, right? Which is, and that's an entire discussion as well. Like, well, if I can play Call of Cthulhu with 0 system mastery, why can't I do that with Dungeons and Dragons? And that is really fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So so at this point, they actually throw me off, and then I tumble over, and they escape, right? Then I walk about a half a mile back to the building, and then I enter the building. In the building is an old man who is the janitor, and his name is Bob, and he's just kind of mopping up. And so I present my, he's like, hey, who is this? And I'm like, hey, hello, my name is Dwayne Harrigan. I'm a federal border patrol agent. Here's my badge, and I'm here to deal with, with these things. I'm here to deal with the body that was brought in, right? So I go in and I meet um, the um, the coroner, and he's an older Hispanic man, a doctor, and I'm like, hello, and I introduced myself, and then he's like, hey, you're here for the autopsy, and I said yes, and autopsy. And he's like, you're here for the autopsy results, and I'm like, he's like, you're way early, and I was like, it's no problem. Do you mind if I stay for the autopsy? He's like, no problem at all, right? And I said, listen. So we go down, and actually, this entire building is like it's a one story, and then it has a basement, right? And so I'm like, hey, I'm here for the yeah. And then so he goes to start to cut it open, right? And I'm like, hey, hold up. Hey, listen. I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I need you to listen to me. I'm here, and I came very early because I believe there's something in that body. I believe that person was killed by a supernatural source and contains a supernatural source within the body. Now this is frustrating. This is tough, right? Like, and I have to say, this is a part of a genre, and I struggle with being patient with genre, right? Like, because I'm like, okay, let's have this same stupid conversation again, right? Supernatural source, you say no, I say yes, I try to convince you, you still don't believe it, right? This is a very good game, and I really enjoyed the whole arc of this campaign, but it is tough because it's just part of the genre, and I need to learn to be more patient with that, right? So I'm like, hey, listen, this is where we're at, right? So I'm like, and so he's like, I assure you that's silly, and I'm like, okay, I've told you, and he's like, well, what do you want? And I was like, I think we should have more people here while we do the autopsy. And he's like, listen, this is high profile. A lot of people want this information quickly. He's 100% right about that. And I'm like, you are 100% right about that. Everybody wants this data quickly. He's like, do you mind if I do the autopsy now? And I'm like, I've given you my warning. I can't give any more warning. We're going to have to do this, right? And so I'm like, let's do it, let's get into it. And so we do, right? Like we get into it, and and it's tough. It's a tough situation, right? So so at this point we actually, yeah. So we're like, hey, let's get into this, And so at that point, he's got the scalpel and he's about to cut into it, and we cut it off there. I'm going to cut off this video here, and I will continue with the story. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for letting me share this with you. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.